Yo.
Yep.
Becca, I have not asked you uh off air, but is it Shack?
Yes. Shack.
Yes,
You
Shack.
did it.
I was
Shack.
like, ooh, there's like C's and H's, and I'm like, in English is my second language. Did I get it right? Um,
Yes.
Amazing, Becca Shack. I'm so humbled and grateful to have a person, a woman in the industry, which is
Woo.
refreshing for the podcast. And we will also talk about this, which I would love to give more more of a stage to. Um, so I feel like let's just start how we start every podcast. You'll just like tell me all about you, and it's all you. Don't take any punches. Don't tell me short stories. Just tell your story. What brought you to here to be who you are and what you do today in the music industry. And also, I feel like that could be later a segue to women in the industry, which we're gonna cover as well. But let's start with your story, Becca.
Awesome, Roy. Well, thanks for having me on here. It's great to be chatting with you, and I appreciate you reaching out. So, yeah, what can I say? I'm a producer, composer, and songwriter and vocalist, and I grew up in upstate New York, kind of studying all different types of music. I was like a very romantic kid, and like thought I heard music in the wind and the trees, like growing up in upstate New York, and I'd come in and like play stuff on the piano by ear, and um, kind of studying viola when I was in elementary school, and I was in all the choirs. And in high school, I played bassoon and the wind ensemble, and kind of composed for different ensembles while I was in high school. And I was also really into like the drama, like the theatrical world. Did like some community theater and dancing. So I was always very like kind of art centered. Like I just loved all the arts. And then slowly music kind of took over everything else. And I ended up studying classical composition at Juilliard during college. And got a really like my goal being to get the broadest sound palette I could by really experimenting with different ensembles and instruments. Um, and then when I graduated, that was like a very focused kind of major, but I had grown up songwriting too, and as well as composing, but I wasn't really performing in college, which I really had missed. And so when I graduated, I sort of got kind of disillusioned by the academia of that world, and I went on to pursue an artist path. I started my own band, my own artist project under the moniker Becca, and started playing lots of shows with indie bands, going on tour, and playing festivals, and eventually having getting a record deal with a UK indie label called This Is Music, and did a bunch of EPs with them, and then later independently released my own LP. And I just like learned a lot through my collaborations with various producers, really talented producers, and eventually started producing my own music. Um, Fast forward to moving to LA in 2014. I was still doing a lot of performance and music videos and records and things like that. And then kind of got the itch to get back into what I always knew I wanted to get into, which is film scoring and production music. So I had dabbled in commercial writing and production music when I was still in New York. And when I got here, it just seemed like the right place, the right time, and I was really inspired by the people around me, and just try to learn as much as possible and meet as many people in the industry as I could. And then from there, just started scoring some projects. I did a short film that did well in the festival circuit and won some awards called Smashed through Women in Media. And then I did my first feature, which is a psychological thriller called Dark Obsession. And Mina Subari is a voice actor in it and producer. And it's actually is coming out on Amazon and Tubi very soon. And it's already on Sky in the UK, and I'll have a soundtrack along with that. So it's my first feature soundtrack, so I'm really excited. Yeah, and so kind of working towards all that stuff, doing lots of short films. I just did my first trailer a few months ago. I just this past year I worked on two different video games, one indie and one AAA video game company, and yeah, that's kind of what I'm up to right now. Oh, I can't hear you anymore. Sorry.
So yeah, I was muted because I was afraid my puppy would start barking,
Oh,
but yeah, she's just laying there. So Sheila's cool. We're all
cute.
cool.
Oh, nice.
So a few things come up as you're speaking. It sounds like, I mean, it always sounds like when people tell a story, it sounds like it all happened like in one boom, like I stopped from Juilliard, I stopped, boom, festivals, feature films, trailer, a triple A games, boom, here I am, what's up, kind of thing. Um,
I
so
don't know.
hell
Yes.
no. I mean, like you've been in LA for 10 years, right? And these are the things that I kind of love going into, like the real the real difficult times, or the real times where you were like, perhaps maybe this is not my thing. Were there any times on the journey that you you didn't know? What were these times of I feel like uncertainty for
Mm,
you, and how did you face this uncertainty?
that's a great question. I would say my most recent time feeling uncertain was maybe in 2017, um, when I sort of started having this like identity shift from being a performing artist and playing lots of shows and recording records and doing everything under my artist project to shifting into more film scoring and collaborating on bigger projects with more people who share a vision. And that's always been kind of my ultimate goal. But when I kind of took a step back from performing, I kind of had to ask myself, like, who am I now? Because that's always how I identified, as a person, as a human, as an artist. And yeah, it took me like some time to kind of get like into acceptance with that, or just feel like, okay, I'm on the right path. Like, this is what I'm doing now. And I think I had to like learn a lot and just kind of try new things and see what it was like, just to kind of find my place in the world again. But now the beautiful thing about it is I've sort of bridged the gap where I'm now doing both. Like, I'm scoring, but I'm also songwriting. And like in the feature film I did, I wrote a song that was more diegetic. Like, the characters hear the song on the radio, and that song becomes one of the main themes of the film. And so that's like the biggest joy for me, is just being able to do everything I love. And I'm, my kind of lean on my strengths in that way, and kind of have that knowing that like I can do both, or I don't have to choose like scoring or songwriting. I can, it's great to kind of just use all the tools that you have available.
Yeah, I mean, so okay, so 2017, and then like where do you feel like things started to connect? Like, I mean, because between artistry and film scoring, there's, I feel like there's a certain paradigm that needs to be shifted within your identity, right? Like your identity needs to change. Something in you needs to make a shift from the mind of, I am everything, I am the center of the stage, I am the whole show, to,
Hmm.
I am writing for this show. I am doing, like, how did it happen for you where you kind of stepped off of that main stage, and what do you think went through your mind as you were doing it? Yeah.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot over the past few years, and I think like being an artist, as much as you're also like giving yourself to your audience, and it's a big energetic exchange between the audience and yourself, especially when you're playing live, and that's such a beautiful energy to be part of. It is kind of a little bit more ego driven in a way because it is more about you, and you're like the front, you're the front person of whatever act you're doing. But as a scoring composer, a collaborator, you're really serving the story and like your collaborators and people that you're working for aside, like rather than your own artist self. So
Mm.
yeah, kind of like that part has to fall away in order to really serve the characters in the story in an authentic and honest way.
Mm. So how yeah, that's super cool. Like so as opposed to yeah, as opposed to you being the main character of everything, which is the
Yeah.
artist's deal a lot of the times, instead of you being the main character of everything, you have to suddenly cater to a main character which is completely outside of the project, which is uh,
Hmm.
um it's such a mind fuck, like
Yeah.
and it's just super fascinating to me, because also like I come from stage and from performing on stage, and I know that adrenaline of like people singing your lyrics or people clapping to your track because you told them to clap, and all these little things that kind of make an artist, like make this sensation so addictive to people,
Hmm.
like the little stage fright that happens every time, and all
Yeah.
these unless you're a psychopath, I think that every like I really think that every artist has a little bit of it, unless they are completely disconnected from reality or drunk to death. Um, and
Absolutely.
uh, and I feel like it's just such a an interesting dissonance between the two worlds. It's two worlds, right?
Hmm.
So
Completely.
um, you start doing for music. I mean, what drove you to start? It sounds like you grew up kind of in that dreamy, just like your handle on Instagram. That her handle, by the way, is Becca Dreams. So in that dreamy state, to the artistry, back to the dreamy state, to the kind of doing it for others. Was that was that a conscious process? Did you have to really let go of something?
Hmm. I don't know if it was a conscious decision as much as like something that just happened, like my natural evolution as a person. I guess like, some people need that their driving force is to be an artist their whole lives, and that's such a beautiful thing, and I still feel connected to that. But there's another part of me that's like, no, there's like a whole world beyond just like, Becca dreams as an artist, and there's like, I think some like, I don't know, I guess it's like allowing me to kind of express the full spectrum um of me, like, and what I want to express in the world, and like the emotional depth I want to reach by these types of collaborations, where I think when you're collaborating on something bigger like a film or a video game, it's like that's the most beautiful like thing. That's my happy place now because
Mm,
it feels like so much bigger than myself. And as it feels very like transformative, and like I guess like I've always wanted to like with my solo project and my music, I always wanted to help people, reach their fullest potential, or inspire people to do that, or be lost in the moment, like while you're like in that moment with music, and like, or on the dance floor or whatever you may be. But when you're watching a film, like you completely go somewhere else, and so I want to be part of that. Like I just
mm.
love that experience, and I want to create that for others.
Yeah, it's so interesting how there are different ways to completely throw somebody off to a new landscape, right? Like a movie does it visually, predominantly visually. Music does it audibly,
Hmm.
um, and and yeah, connecting the two is kind of a one-two punch, I guess. It's more of it's a very powerful combination. Anyhow, that this is why beautiful music videos still have the impact they
Absolutely.
do, because
Yes.
because
Hmm.
there's it's become an artistry of connecting image to music, and doing it in a way that tells a story. Like movies have been doing it for ages, but now I feel like music videos have kind of understood that. Like people who create music videos have understood it since the 90s. But yeah, movies have been doing it for so long, right? Like for way longer. I mean,
Yeah.
arguably from the early 1900s, 19 yeah, like yeah,
Mm.
1920. Like I don't know when the first black and white movie came, but yeah,
Yeah, that's actually
so
funny that you
yeah,
bring up music videos because I've made a bunch of music videos and for my project, and it always like was the best time for me. Like I always loved the process of working with a filmmaker, producer. I'd often be part of like the storyboarding or the like the creative process on it. And funny enough, in early fall, I got approached to do a music video again. Like it's been a while. It's been a few years since I've made a music video, and it wasn't even on my radar. And
for
when
yourself.
yeah, for myself with a
Mm,
song that I wrote. It turns out that Women in Media, which is a female-led and non-gender conforming community that I've worked with and I'm part of, that I love, um, they approached me because they needed some music for an educational project they were doing with a lighting company called Quasar Science, and basically using a virtual production set. They wanted their crew members to be able to learn how to use a virtual production set and work in that space so they can get jobs. So I provided the song. And we shot a music video and it's almost done, and it's like it was so amazing to get back into that space and play in that space again, and also do it in a whole new way that I've never done before, because it was done using Unreal Engine backgrounds, which are used for video game environments. Like it's like a full map, and like you can kind of pre-plan like how you want the background to move and like be shot and be lit within, like it's totally different than a green screen because you have to really like pre-plan every shot because it's on like a moving visual like with lighting and everything. So it was just the coolest experience, and I feel like through that whole thing I learned so much more about the filmmaking process. So it was like, on many levels, like such a really cool and learning experience for me. And the song "Never Too Late" was actually written for a movie that came out last year. So it's
mm.
kind of everything's sort of come full circle with that.
Wow.
Yeah,
How oh, I got a question. So, what do
yeah.
you say what do you say yes to? How do you feel because it feels like all your experiences, all the things that you've accomplished to this day, I can say the one common denominator is you saying yes. Like I have no doubt about it. Zero doubt. I'm good like that with analyzing these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And and I have a question. What do you say yes to? Because like you can only stretch yourself to a certain extent, right? And I'm sure you have to say no to some things. What do you say yes to? I mean, what would be your advice in decision making in order to for somebody to create that full circle for themselves?
Hmm. It's a great question. I always lead with my heart. So if something feels right in my body, like if usually it's the aesthetic, the creative vision of the project. Then, of course, the budget has to be kind of considered, whether it's, how much time is it going to take? Do I have the time and ability to work on this? And is the budget going to make sense for me? And then do I like the people I'm going to be working with? Because, depending on the scope of the project, I could be working with them for a while. So I try to like get all three at the same time if I possibly can. Sometimes that's not possible.
So
Sometimes
what are the three? Can you repeat them?
um, just kind of my intuitive, kind of heart centered self, like
Yeah.
feels good. It feels like, yes, I want to do this. The creative vision is aligned, and then the budget, whether there's a big budget or no budget. I've done both. I've done everything in between, and still, of course, working towards the bigger budget projects. But those are all things to consider, and also, finally, the time it's going to take to actually see the project through from start to finish.
Yeah. I, well, it's amazing. Like this is something again that I stressed again because I want people to go back and listen to, and I'll probably listen to it like three times because the the body feeling can sometimes be completely in not in concert with the other two, and I feel
Absolutely.
like there has to be a balance
Hmm.
because I'll tell you, like, just from a personal standpoint, my listeners know I love like drawing out my skeletons. It's therapeutic for me, but it's just what it is. And I feel like sometimes I say yes to what my body says yes to, or to what the budget says yes to, or to what the creative process says yes to, without considering the other two. So I think like and then the process ends up being miserable
Yeah.
because you're either working for peanuts and you're living in LA, I'm living in Bali, don't worry about me kind of thing. But also 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 living in Bali and having income that comes and provides for me, um, sometimes I feel like I'm stress like I'm giving too much of myself, and that's not a good feeling. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the problem that a lot of people have, uh, including myself, is that some people let themselves be stepped on and then wonder why they're being stepped on. So the person on the other side usually doesn't want to step on you, right? But you're letting them step on you. So you're kind of dictating to yourself and to the other person, this is how you work with me,
Mm-hmm.
and then you feel bad about yourself. So I feel like, to be honest, the reason I'm asking you all these deeper questions is because it seems like you have been through the ringer on these things, and you've navigated through them so beautifully. I can just see how you compose yourself, no pun intended, and and how you show up to the world. And I'm sure you have some tantrums and some downfalls and some of these lower places where you're kind of you're indecisive with yourself because you're still on the come up and you're still taking these decisions. So I would love to know how it looks like for you, and if if you've done any significant mistakes that you'd like to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Well, yeah, first of all, you're right. I have been through the ringer. Like, part of me coming to LA was wanting to get a fresh start. And, I had been through all sorts of different crazy experiences being a female artist in the industry, as everyone I'm sure has experienced. And so I sort of made a conscious decision like, hey, I'm only going to surround myself with good people, you know, um, when I moved to LA, and just making kind of setting that intention and having better boundaries because I knew through experience how to conduct myself. has really led to some beautiful collaborations and like having a much better, healthier experience. Um, I would say I don't know if I've made. I guess all my like so-called mistakes have been great learning experiences. So I try to look back on them as like as gifts and reminders of like what not to do again. Like I've done plenty of free projects for the experience. I guess one of the biggest mistakes I ever made was signing a contract with a producer without getting a lawyer, and it turned out like I had to spend like $4,000 later and hire a really expensive lawyer to get myself out of that deal. And then at the end of the day, the whole thing just like left such a bad taste in my mouth. I ended up leaving the project and being like, all right, I'm done. Like I don't need to pursue this any further, because I realized like I wasn't on the same page as my collaborator at the time. And that was the best decision I made, you know, one of the best decisions I made. But it was a very expensive mistake. So, you know, things like that, I know better now to always hire a lawyer, or to like you know, really go through every contract with a fine-tooth comb, and also draft my own contracts, because I know a lot of filmmakers don't really understand how the composition works, especially with indies. So it's always better if you can kind of lay the ground rules and sort of set the tone of how things are going to go, in a way that's completely fair to everyone involved, of course. So yeah, that would be my
Yeah,
advice.
beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. I mean, I feel like for specifically for production music, it's more straightforward. The contracts are way more straightforward. They're way more industry standard kind of thing. So it's way easier to do it even without a lawyer. Um,
Yeah,
that being
absolutely.
said, if you got somebody who's really good with words and
Yeah.
who is kind of on your corner, I think that is a huge thing to just because every single one of us is going somewhere, and I
Mhm.
feel like just like you were speaking to, the more people you have on your side which want the best for you
Mhm.
is going to just create more good for you. So I mean, like, so
Mhm.
stop. For me, it comes down to stop shutting yourself in a room and expect for all the good people to come. Like you have to sometimes put yourself out there in
Absolutely.
order to meet these people and feel their energy.
Mhm.
Because emails don't always convey the information and what you're speaking to. Wow, I'm looking at the wavelength and I'm speaking a lot this podcast, so I'm sorry. But I feel like I feel like your example is truly uh it goes back to the big three that you were speaking to, the three uh, um the three things that you use for your process, which is um full body creativity and is it worth it kind of thing.
Mhm.
And that is just you, that's a lesson where you learned that it doesn't work with one sometimes where one is really lacking.
Yeah.
And yeah, and sometimes it costs you $4,000. I'll add a little story because everything you're saying is just wow. It's I want to be your friend and kind of thing. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
such a great person. Um, so but wow, where was I going? I forgot where I was going for this. There was a story that I wanted to. Oh, so one guest that has been on the pod has we were planning for him to be on the podcast. I forgot to show up for the interview, and now this has happened to me in the past where I'm scheduling a meeting and not getting to the meeting, and I
Mhm.
decided fuck it, like I have to do something about it because this is not honoring me, this is not honoring the person who I'm meeting.
Mhm.
I have to do something about it, so I don't come across as a shady person, or so I don't come across as somebody who I don't want to become.
Yeah.
So what I did was, and everybody's a witness to it right now, and you too, is what I did was with that person. I told him, listen, if let's schedule another one. If this ever happens to me again, I am donating $200 to a cause of the guest's choice, or
Wow.
giving it straight up to the person who I've just wasted their time. Like they have
Wow.
the decision. And I feel like with everything that I do, a big thing with it is accountability. And
Yeah.
artists don't tend to have enough accountability in their lives. Therefore, they are prone to make many mistakes on their skin, like to have many mistakes being made on their skin. And I've experienced it first, like just from on my skin a lot in these 10 years trying to make it as a musician.
Yeah.
Um, and just asking the questions to the to amazing people who want good for me, but who are also not afraid to hold back when information is dry information is needed,
Hmm.
um, was huge for me. So I appreciate you for sharing that story, and for also saying, yeah, just speaking what you're speaking.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I feel like it's important to kind of share our personal experiences and help others like through those experiences because, maybe it could help someone who, might otherwise like make that mistake. So I'm glad to, be of service however I can. I'm kind of in a space of like wanting to help others around me in however ways I can, even though I'm still learning myself. So it's always, life is like an ongoing learning process for me. So as long as
Mm.
I'm constantly learning and sharing new ideas with others, it's very fulfilling. So I appreciate that.
How do you feel like your time is divided nowadays that you do so many different things?
Yeah. Well, usually I'll kind of like organize my time in blocks. Like, for example, the past 3 months I worked on like three different big projects: the music video, the a music production library for a studio, and a video game company. And I had to kind of prioritize which was the most like time sensitive at, any given day or week, and then sort of manage my time around that project. So, for example, like I had 2 weeks where I had to really just be on like Zoom calls with the music video production team and be focusing on that. But then in between, I had to be working composing. So I had just had to kind of communicate my boundaries with other people, whoever I was meeting with, and then kind of create these time blocks for myself where I was able to get like a chunk of creative time done, scoring or writing cues, and then taking meetings or doing, doing work on the other projects. So that's kind of how it works for me. I prefer, because I don't love multitasking and I'm not very good at it, to be honest. I really prefer just diving deep into one project at a time, but of course that's not always possible. So I'm trying to get better at time management when I'm juggling a few different projects.
Yeah, same here, 100%.
Yeah.
Um, and I wanna give this last kind of part of the interview to being a female in the industry, and in the space of scoring, in the space of production music, what it means to you, and just how you see it in general.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great time to be a woman in the industry or any gender really, because I think we're breaking down a lot of barriers, and I find myself aligning with a lot of um, like female driven communities, like the Alliance of Women Film Composers and Women in Media, Women in Film, which I just joined recently. Um, and I've always like felt really strongly about equality like across the board, whether it's like gender, race, religion, like anything, like we were talking about earlier with like the othering. Like I think like everyone should be valued for their talent and skills, and you know um And if one person's as good as the other, like why not hire them? So I think reaching gender parity in the entertainment industry is deeply important, and it's an exciting time because we're starting to really shift things, and you could see that in the numbers of like how many female composers are composing for TV shows or films, and it's really so inspiring. So I aspire to be out there with all of my colleagues and be doing that as well.
Mm. I'm actually looking right now for the meaning of othering, and there I don't see anything othering.
Yeah,
Uh,
I could have made that up.
the
So
act of treating someone as though they are not part of a group and they're different in some way. And there, it looks like there is a meaning in the Cambridge Dictionary. So I'm
cool.
sorry, Becca, you did not coin this term
Oh,
today. Um, yeah, that's sad. That's sad. And
all good, all good. I
yeah,
knew
the
it.
the
It had to
the
come from
best artists
somewhere.
steal though. The best artists steal. So
That's
don't worry about it. We're not gonna. Nobody's gonna tell on you. There's just a few hundred people who are listening to this.
right.
Yeah. So yeah, so Becca was saying othering before we went on the podcast, and I was like, wow, othering is a great term, and othering has been happening a lot in the world of as of late, and in this last month and a half, 2 months, in the last few years. I feel like people are looking to be unique, to be different, to be someone,
Mhm,
and 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 it also creates a huge division within societies, within groups, within industries. And that's why I feel like it's so important to kind of stress this term, and to it's an important time to come together more than ever. So i'm
yeah.
i'm super happy that you are kind of speaking to it, because I feel like the more bullshit we cut through, the
Hmm.
better we come as humans. And and this whole business is, it ain't worth shit if we're not happy doing what we're doing, and if we're not doing what we're doing from a sense of purpose. And this is the whole thing with the podcast. It was just me asking myself, do I want to do it? Like, do I want to do this full time? Like, do I want to do it with these people who I'm working with, but I don't really know? And like, as this podcast is, it's episode 54. Yeah, your episode 54. and
Awesome.
and as this is progressing, I feel like there's more and more of this feeling of having to get together, like community, building community. What
Yeah.
does So you've added you've connected with a few communities. What do you actively do to create yourself, to create that community for yourself?
Well, I try to go to as many events like as these communities hold and try to like meet people and make genuine friends, with the people because there's just some great people out there. And it's actually, I could be very introverted, and what we do professionally is very solitary a lot of the time. So sometimes it's really nice to.
Very othering.
Yes, exactly.
I'm trying to use it. I'm trying to use this word desperately.
Let's say it as much as possible. um but yeah, I mean, it's nice to kind of get outside of my own space and meet and like hang out with people that are trying to doing the same thing I'm doing, and like we can kind of nerd out over gear or like our experiences and like just create a process, and it's just like it's so fun. And I feel like it's a really special place to be, LA, because in New York, in anywhere else, I've never felt the sense of community. And I mean, the internet really brings new friends too, like you and Greg Ton and other people I've met through Instagram, which is so cool. But yeah, I think it is really important to meet people and figure out like you know how can we either just like be there for each other or help each other in some way, like progress as humans or in the creative space. I'm really grateful to just be surrounded by so many like beautiful and talented people. It's just such
Mm.
a gift.
Are there any guiding principles like hell yes, hell no's that you let guide you in the industry, like some red flags, some things that are non-negotiables, some boundaries that you set for yourself? Because you were talking about boundaries.
Hmm. Let me think. I'm not sure. I'll have to think on that
Mm.
one. I guess like one of it is like if there's no budget or like something seems shady, it probably is. Like I try to kind of follow my gut on things. Like I want to work with people who are good people and have like good intentions and are smart about how they do business and um like knowledgeable. I always try to surround myself with people who are smarter than me so I can learn and be better. So if it feels like it's not, I'm either not going to learn or grow creatively from the project or be able to serve the project to my best ability, then I will. That's a big no for me.
Yeah, a good friend of mine once told me, if there's doubt, there's no doubt. I just love this
Yes.
sentence so much. So yeah, special. It's 100%. And I wanted to touch on another thing, like scoring a film, scoring a series. What does the process look like for you? And what does it look like, this like decision making wise, if you're able to take it, or like what does all of that look before and within the doing of a feature film, or a triple A game, or what do these things look like for you, because they pay very differently, right? How do they look for you? Like, what does it look like? Let's say for a beginner composer who wants to know what is scoring a feature film or a show. What does it look like for you?
Well, I could only speak on scoring a film because I haven't done episodic yet, but I hope to soon. But for film, my experience is usually having a conversation with the filmmaker, ask or the producer or both, seeing what um, first of all like what the story concept is, what kind of musical references they have, like what they want it to sound like, even if they describe it in like emotional terms or like any musical references they may have or another film reference that they like the music for, things like that. Like the more information that I can get from them, the better, because I kind of know what their tastes are like. And um, and then I guess budget wise, like if they want it to be like electronic or have live instruments or, you know, a bigger kind of ensemble, then obviously like the budget would have to cover that. And Obviously, like the more live musicians you have, like the bigger the budget should be. And it's always like makes such a big difference when you can afford live musicians because it just elevates it so much. Um, so and then I usually, if there's a rough cut, sometimes if I'm brought in pre-production, there's not a rough cut yet. But if it's already shot, then I try to get a rough cut so I can kind of get my eyes on it. Um, and then from there, I'll do a spotting session with the filmmaker, which is um, I'll get together with them either in person over Zoom, and we'll watch down the film together, and then they'll tell me where all the musical cues go, and I'll put together a cue sheet, which I take notes and write down each kind of timestamp where the music goes and kind of what type of music should be there, like whether it's diegetic or you know or a different like emotion or whatever's happening in the scene. Like does it need to be underscore because there's dialogue, or does it need to be a big musical moment where there's no dialogue, that kind of thing. um, and then I will go on my way and start and put together a schedule. Usually I'll look at my calendar, I'll see when the deadline is, and I'll work backwards. Like, okay, like I have to do this many cues in this many days and whatnot. And then I'll deliver a certain amount of cues in, you know, a certain time frame, like which I'll kind of decide on with the filmmaker. Um, and then will like be like kind of the reviewing process where like I'm composing, setting a bunch of cues. They'll give me feedback. I usually ask them to like sit with it for a day so they can kind of take it in and kind of like see how they feel, because sometimes a filmmaker will be used to a temp score or like something else that they had in their mind, and sometimes it just like takes a minute for them to kind of feel into what it's sounding like, and then they'll send me revision notes, and then I'll revise those notes and send them back until it's done.
Mm,
So yeah, but I forgot to mention before all that, once we agree on kind of the basics of the project, I'll send them a contract or an agreement. I guess if they have a bigger studio attached to them, which I haven't experienced yet, then they would send the composer a contract.
mm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
So like with things like Amazon, with like Smashed, I guess things like I'm getting more specific, I guess, is are you looking at it more as a wow, this will be a great back end? Like I can kind of I can co- does your mind, does it happen, does it occur to you that you'll get a lot of back end from it, so you kind of you're willing to work for less upfront? Or when you're scoring a feature film, are you thinking, nah, this I have to get X upfront, and back end royalties are kind of a bonus or whatnot? What is it how do you think about it?
Yeah, it's really hard to know when they'll be back end or not for film. I would say like I've had really good luck with back end happening for like sync needle drops in TV shows and things like of that nature. But for a
So
film
more
like on
production
Amazon,
music, more of the
yeah, doing more
yeah,
production music or
yeah,
sync music, that's
yeah.
the whole. I feel like I can expect a lot more back end there. But for film, I don't really expect it. I mean, sometimes if you can negotiate some sort of like percentage of the film, like hey, if the film is a hit, like the composer will get X amount, percent of the earnings, from
Mm.
streaming or whatever, or from box office, um, but
Because in games
uh,
it's huge. Like in games, if you can negotiate like a 50-50 or whatever on a track that you've made, that the game comes, the AAA game comes, the soundtrack comes out, it's millions of plays at times. Like I know for fact, like I have friends who wrote for League of Legends and things like that, and they're also getting really great back end through Spotify. So these are things not to underestimate for sure.
absolutely, yeah. I think if you can keep the masters and or you can like collect on the mechanical royalties, like that's a huge plus. It's not always possible depending on who you're working with,
Mhm.
but always try to negotiate that way for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Hmm.
Okay, so I feel like we've covered a lot for this time. I will next time I'm in LA, we are linking for sure.
Yes,
But
definitely.
this is our round one. Is there anything you'd like to leave composers with, people who are trying to, I guess, uh, um, walk in your step? Is there a walk in your kind of steps, who are inspired by this? Is there any last piece of advice you'd like to leave people with?
Sure. I would say try to learn as much as possible. I mean, the more you know about your craft, learn, music theory and like orchestration as much as deeply as you can. Listen to a lot of music. Just like do a deep dive on all the greats, because that'll just further expand your palette and understanding. And then like learn your DAW inside and out. Like just the faster you can be and the better of a producer you can be, I think like the more you'll be able to get your ideas out. So I would just say like the key for me is like just to learn as much as possible and also connect with your community, make friends, and like just go for things like, go for jobs, go for things that even you don't feel ready for, because like you'll never feel ready for them, in my opinion. I think it's just good to kind of put yourself out there, once you feel like you're at a certain level and you're ready to start, um, kind of sharing your gifts with people. Just put yourself out there and just go for it.
Amazing. Becca, where can people find you?
You could find me at my website, beccaschack.com. That's BECCASCHACK.com, and on the socials.
Yes. Woman. I'm so happy I've had you on. You
Yeah.
will definitely be back, and I'm grateful that you came on. So thank you so much, Becca.
Thank you, Roy. It's been a pleasure. Have a great one.
Yo, how amazing is Becca? I'm so grateful for her coming through. We'll definitely meet in real life, and we will definitely have a round two. Just mark my words. And I'm so grateful for y'all listening all the way through. Make sure to follow the podcast on whatever medium platform you're listening to it on. Make sure you rate the podcast. This really, really helps. All of that, these little things, these few clicks really help the podcast gain more ears, more tractions, and more options for me to take this podcast forward and have many more amazing guests like Becca. Thank y'all for listening. Again, I love y'all, and see you at the next one. Peace.